Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm going to be going over my favorite movies of 2020. I haven't watched too many movies this year that came out this year. I have actually watched a lot of movies this year, but not that many of them actually came out in 2020. So if I'm not mistaken, I watched a total of 15 movies this year that came out in 2020. I'll go over the bottom five, which I'm not really going to rate or anything. I'm just going to tell you what movies they were and tell you a little bit about the movies. And then I'll go to my top 10 and I'll go more in depth about each movie. Also, I can't show too many clips of the movies because I don't want this video to get taken down, so I apologize for that. So number 15 on my 2020 movies list was Spencer Confidential. Spencer Confidential is a Netflix original movie, and it's about a guy who just got out of prison and he's trying to solve a murder conspiracy. He's a former Boston police officer and he's returning to the criminal underworld. This movie was complete and utter trash in my opinion. Super cheesy, did nothing special, and it was just a super basic movie that looked like a 10-year-old could have written it, and I do not recommend you waste your time on it. Next up on my list, number 14 is Time to Hunt. It's a group of Korean kids who are planning a heist. Well, it's not really a group of Korean kids. They're like adults, basically. And they're basically just planning a heist to kind of escape their dystopian town. But this group of kids attracts vicious killers, and this movie is basically just them running away from them. In the beginning, it's a pretty cheesy heist movie, and I thought it did something special by not being a heist movie the whole time, but them also having to escape at the end. But it turned out by the end of the movie, nothing really went down. The story was pretty basic and lame. They kind of just combined a thriller movie with a heist movie, and it didn't really work in my opinion. The director of the movie was very critically acclaimed. It was just a basic heist movie with a slight twist, and that twist didn't even really work for me. Number 13 on my list is Capone. Now, Capone is probably one of my most hyped films for 2020 that I was like going into the year, I was really looking forward to. It stars Tom Hardy, and I had super high expectations for this movie. It kind of goes over the final days of the notorious gangster named Al Capone, kind of going through his dementia, reliving his past, and going through his tormented memories. I thought Tom Hardy played Capone really well, and I thought his performance was awesome, but the rest of the story was just pretty basic. I mean, all these movies that are at the bottom of my list are just basic movies, or they just had a big part of them that didn't work, and this movie just, I feel like, didn't work overall. I felt like it didn't really have a purpose. I mean, yeah, the purpose was kind of to show Al Capone's past and like what he suffered through and stuff, but I just never got any emotion out of it, and that's what I felt like they were trying to convey. At the end of the movie, it felt like they were just trying to make us sympathize for him, and nothing really worked for me in that movie. Next up on my list is another Netflix original called Project Power. It stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as well as Jamie Foxx, and there's a slight little cameo in there by Casey Neistat. The movie's about how a former soldier teams up with a cop, and they both have to find the source to this dangerous pill that gives you temporary superpowers. Even though the concept of the movie was kind of basic, I felt like it was displayed pretty well, but then towards the end, the storyline got super basic and it just got super cheesy. In the beginning, the CGI was also super good for a Netflix original, and I was honestly very impressed. But honestly, the story just got boring after a while and everything just fell flat at a certain point. Number 11 on my list is Birds of Prey. In this movie, Harley Quinn is played by Margot Robbie. After her breakup with Joker, there's a really big target put on her back, and she's basically on the run from all these other villains. The big villain in this movie is called Black Mask. I thought the villain in this movie was alright. I felt like the biggest issue in this movie was the combat. Also in this movie, Margot Robbie gets introduced to 3 other allies who help her on this mission. Nothing in this movie is really that good. It was kind of more of a basic superhero movie. I would definitely put it up against other DC movies, but honestly that's not much to go against because not all DC movies are actually that good. So now let's move on to my top 10. Now number 10 on my list, surprisingly, is Extraction. It's another Netflix original that stars Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth plays a black market mercenary who basically has nothing to lose in this movie. He's hired to rescue the kidnapped son of a crime lord, and the entire movie is basically Chris Hemsworth trying to get the kid and return him to safety. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was like, okay, this is just going to be another basic action-packed movie, kind of like a Mark Wahlberg type of thing. But honestly, I felt like the plot was so basic, yet it had so much little stuff to make up for it that it actually worked for me. Like I said before, the plot was super basic, but I felt like the perfectly choreographed action, the explosions, and everything in between filled in all of the gaps. I love the way that the action flowed throughout the entire movie, and I really hope that in the second one they fix the story issues that they had with this one. If of course they make a second one. I do want Chris Hemsworth back. I don't know how they're going to bring him back after that ending, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But I really do hope they do make a second one because I felt like it had a lot of potential, especially with the director being a stunt coordinator before. I think there's a lot of potential in those kinds of movies, and it wasn't like over the top explosions necessarily, as much as it was gun to gun and then hand to hand combat. This movie also has one of my favorite chase sequences in 2020. This is the car sequence that goes throughout the town. If you guys have seen the movie, you already know what I'm talking about. If I'm not mistaken, the director sat on the hood of the front car that was like going super fast in between the town, and the behind the scenes looks crazy, and they did a lot of VFX, like unseen VFX in the movie that just made it 10 times better. But yeah, that movie was great, and I thought that people hated on it a lot because I thought, of course, yeah, the story was weak. It was like a basic action movie storyline, but I felt like the action, the coordination, and combat, everything made up for it. Number 9 on my list is Onward. Onward is a Disney Pixar movie that came out earlier this year starring Tom Holland and Chris Pratt. The movie's about a pair of teenage elf brothers who go on a journey to get their dad back. In this movie, the boys follow a pretty rough path, and they have to get through cryptic messages and maps. And when their mom finds out that they left, she also goes on a journey to go and find them. I definitely thought there was a lot going on in this movie, especially for a kid's movie. Nothing in this movie ever really got me bored, and I actually felt entertained almost the entire time. This is one of those Disney movies that I really recommend you guys watch, and I don't think Disney missed with this one at all. It was a super great movie. Now, I'll admit, I really did not like this movie at first, and then I rewatched it a second time and realized how good it was. Number 8 on my list is Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 stars Gal Gadot, Kristen Wiig, Chris Pine, and Pedro Pascal. Even with this star-studded lineup, this movie was relatively disappointing. Now, obviously, it's not a bad movie if it's this high up on my list, but then again, it wasn't anything special to me. It didn't nearly live up to the hype that I thought it was, but it was still a great movie nevertheless. This movie takes place in the 1980s, obviously. It's about Princess Diana kind of blending in with the people. She finds herself having to square off against Pedro Pascal's character Maxwell Lord, as well as Christian Wiig's character Cheetah. I don't want to get too much into this movie and tell you all of my thoughts because I did do a review, and the link is in the description down below for that. Again, I thought the movie was good, but it wasn't anything special, and that's why it's at number 8 on my list. Number 7 on my list is a movie that I watched really recently called Enola Holmes. In this movie, Millie Bobby Brown plays Enola Holmes, and she's basically trying to find her missing mother. In this movie, she's basically trying to outsmart Sherlock Holmes, which is her brother, and in the process of trying to find her mother, she also finds this runaway boy. I'm going to be doing a full review of this movie because I thought it was a pretty special movie. Now, at first, when I saw the trailer, I thought it'd just be a cheesy Netflix movie, but I'm super glad I watched it. I felt like this movie had a lot of great character development, as well as a lot of great plots and questions going at the same time. But I also felt like that was one of its biggest weaknesses, is that there was too much going on at times. I felt like there were too many subplots going on at once, but nevertheless, the conclusion of the story and all the rest of the story was actually awesome. I never thought that I'd be a fan of this movie, but I'm here to say it was a great movie, and dared I even say it, it was pretty awesome. It was a great ride as a movie, and it was entertaining from the beginning to the finish. Now, I'm not going to say that it wasn't overwhelming at times, but I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I'm going to be making a full review of Enola Holmes, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description when the video comes out. Number 6 on my list is Soul. I also did a full review on this movie, and that link will be in the description as well. Jamie Foxx plays Soul, and Tina Fey plays 22. The movie is about Joe, who's a band teacher, and his whole life hasn't really gone the way he expected it to. Finally, he gets a shot at what he wants to do and what he loves to do, which is play jazz. And then he dies. I know that's super blunt and a really raw way to put it, but they showed it in the trailer, so don't be surprised that I said it here. When he dies, he goes to the Great Beyond, which is basically where souls go to before they actually fully die. He manages to escape the Great Beyond and then goes to the Great Before. In the Great Before, he meets a soul named 22. 22 is a soul that's been in the Great Before for a very long time, and she's had many mentors before, also like Abraham Lincoln and Mother Teresa. But none of them have actually been able to give her the spark that she needs in her little pass thingy to get the Earth pass, and then she can jump to Earth. But the thing is, she's never actually tried because she doesn't actually like Earth. So Joe and 22 are basically trying to fill out 22's slot so that 22 can give her Earth pass to Joe so he can get back and fulfill his dream of playing jazz. Now, my thoughts on the movie are pretty simple. I loved the story and I loved everything about it. I loved the voice acting. I loved the animation. Okay, Disney does not miss with their animation. Pixar does not miss with this animation. It was chef's kiss. It was pretty perfect. I thought it lacked in one area and one area only. And a lot of people said that it was emotionally there for them, but I just felt emotionally absent during the movie. I don't know what it was. I just didn't really connect with it, I guess, because, I mean, I'm only 16, so I don't really have, like, a purpose in life yet, I guess, or I haven't really thought of my purpose in life. Maybe it's just me personally, but I didn't really have an emotional connection with the movie, and that's the only reason I didn't give it, like, a 10 out of 10. Now we're going to get on to the top 5. Number 5 on my list is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Now again, I did do a review on this movie, so if you guys want to check it out, you can check out the link in the description down below. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom stars Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis. The movie is basically a behind-the-scenes look at Ma Rainey and her kind of band. Chadwick Boseman plays Levy, who is one of the band members. And the story is pretty good. I just felt like there was no like actual story there. Now, I ranted about this on that review, but I'll do it here too, I guess. I felt like the acting in this movie was awesome. It was an A+, and I do think Viola Davis as well as Chadwick Boseman should get nominated for Best Actor and Actress. But I felt like the biggest issue with the movie was that there wasn't like an overall storyline, and I didn't really feel fulfilled at the end. And what I mean by that is the main storyline of the movie felt like it was Ma Rainey recording her song. And even if it wasn't a story, it was just documenting that process. But the end of the movie, it doesn't really end that way. Like, they record the song and finish the song like 15 minutes before the movie even ends. And then there's a lot of big stuff that goes down in the last like 15 minutes of the movie. But it's super big, like it's super important, but it doesn't feel like it had an actual impact on the story. And you're just left with your mouth wide open. You don't really know what to say. Again, I love this movie a lot and I thought it was awesome. I thought the acting was awesome, but it didn't feel like the ending was properly placed. It felt like it was kind of random for me. Now let's move on to number 4, and that on my list is The Devil All the Time. The Devil All the Time does have a pretty star-studded cast. It has Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, as well as Bill Skarsgård and Sebastian Stan. I never really did a review for this movie, so I thought I'd go more in detail of it in this video. The movie's basic storyline is about a young man, who's played by Tom Holland, and his devotion to protecting his loved ones in his city. The town that he lives in is filled with corrupt as well as sinister characters. And my favorite thing about this movie is the amount of storylines that it has. I know I complained about Enola Holmes having too many storylines and too many subplots clashing in, but I felt like this movie did it really well. The Devil All the Time starts in a really weird place. And at first, the movie is super duper confusing and I honestly had no idea what was going on. But as the movie keeps progressing, all of the storylines tie in together and everything comes together so well and so perfectly. It all just fits in and snaps in your head. This movie is like the type of movie that when it starts, you're like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to watch some YouTube videos after I'm done watching this movie because I have no idea what's going on. But at the end, they surprise you and you actually fully understand what's happening because everything's tied in so well. I honestly thought it was just gonna be another generic thriller movie that Netflix was making, except this time put a little country style twist to it. But this movie was probably one of the best thrillers I've seen in a long time. One of my favorite things about this movie was the performances of all of the characters. As I said before, this movie had a star-studded cast and all of them delivered. My only complaint about the movie is that I wish they had Robert Pattinson's character in there a little more because I loved his performance and I felt like he didn't get enough time to fully shine. And Tom Holland's performance blew me out of the water. I did not expect his range to be this far, and this movie really got me excited for Cherry. Before we get into the top 3, remember, if you guys haven't already liked this video, make sure to do so. And also subscribe if you're new to the channel. It'll mean a lot to me. So number 3 on the list is 1917. So I know a lot of you guys are going to say, oh, 1917 came out in 2019, but technically it only came out in select theaters in 2019 and it was open release in 2020. 1917 stars George McKay as well as Dean Charles Chapman. This movie is about 2 British soldiers during World War I. In a race against time, they must deliver a message to the other corporal, who's played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And this letter basically says to stop the attack because 1,600 men could die. In the mix of these 1,600 men is one of the main character's brothers. Also, if you guys didn't already know, 1917 looked like a one-shot movie, which is my favorite part about it. I feel like a lot of people really discredit the amount of work that goes into this one-shot looking movie. I mean, I don't see many people talking about it. 1917 did win the best award for cinematography, but I still feel like no one talks about it at all. If you haven't already seen this movie, I really recommend you watch it. It's super good. Number 2 on my list is The Trial of the Chicago 7. I went into watching this movie not watching a single trailer or snippet from the movie at all, and I was pleasantly surprised by what this movie gave to me. This movie is a Netflix original. This movie stars Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, Mark Rylance, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, I don't know how to pronounce that name, as well as Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Michael Keaton. This movie is based on the infamous trial of 1969 on 7 defendants. All 7 of these defendants' charges came from the countercultural protests of Chicago. These protests were at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. I didn't necessarily have anything bad to say about this movie. I thought it was a great movie and I really recommend you watch it. It's on Netflix right now. Again, it's a Netflix original, and I was honestly surprised that Netflix pulled off a movie like this. It's one of my favorite Netflix original movies of all time, and I don't think you should miss out on it. Go watch it now. Number one, my favorite movie of 2020. I mean, there weren't that many movies that I watched this year that came out this year, but there were a lot that I loved and a lot that I hated, and one of the ones that I loved, and honestly the one I loved the most, was Tenet. Tenet by Christopher Nolan was a masterpiece in my opinion. I know a lot of people didn't like the movie, right? But it's one of my favorite Nolan films. I love the twists and turns, the mind bending. I love everything about this movie. I thought Denzel Washington was great as his character, as well as Robert Pattinson and Elizabeth Debicki. Also, I did a full review on this movie. Make sure to check out the link in my description for that. That'll be the top link in the description. Tenet review. I love the movie so much. I talk so much good stuff about it, but I only have one big issue with it. One issue. And you might be wondering, Aryan, if the Trial of the Chicago 7 doesn't have an issue, why is it below Tenet? Well, I felt like it's because Tenet's other stuff really made up for this issue. I mean, the issue wasn't that big of a deal to me, but it was a pretty big thing. It just didn't really make or break the movie for me. Before I get into my one gripe about this movie, I thought the movie was awesome because of how much action it had in it, as well as how well the characters fed off of each other. My biggest issue with the movie is that there was no emotional attachment to any of the characters. I felt like all the characters kind of went off of each other, and we didn't really get a good backstory on any of them. Now, obviously, I feel like that's kind of the point of this movie, is kind of just to be thrown into the action, not know much about everything around you, and just watch the story. But it felt like the protagonist really was just kind of a gateway for Nolan to tell his story, instead of him actually being a character. Ever since I watched this movie, I've been nonstop watching YouTube videos about theories and stuff, and I love when a movie makes me want to rewatch it. I'm super excited. I'm gonna rewatch Tenet again tonight. I just watched Tenet like a week before filming this video, and I'm already gonna rewatch it again. I highly recommend you guys watch Tenet, okay? It's so good. It's my favorite movie of 2020, and it's on my list, like top 25 of all time, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I need to tweak my list really quick. But other than that, this video is pretty much over. Those are my top 10 movies of 2020, as well as the other 5 that I watched. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like rating down below. And also remember that this is just my opinion. Everyone has their different opinions. A lot of people that I saw, their list for 2020 movies, Soul was number 1, and I completely understand because I thought that movie was awesome. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to personal preference. Like I said before, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like rating down below. Share with your friends if you enjoyed. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.